Well, hello everybody and welcome to another episode, and today we're going to have a mailbag episode where I'm going to answer some of the questions that you've sent in. So many thanks to everybody who's sent in questions. We've had a real good response to that, so thank you for that. So without further ado, I think we'll just dive into the questions. So Angie1235 says, I love these videos, but lenses have increased a lot in price recently. That's certainly true. And I wonder if your videos and others like them are driving this. Well, Angie, I think prices would have increased with or without my help, or indeed the help of other YouTubers. Clearly it must have made some difference, but I don't think it's made a massive difference. I think the rise in prices of all things film, the cameras and the lenses and all the kit, I think that rise in prices has been driven really by the big resurgence in the interest in film photography that began, I don't know, 4 or 5 years back, maybe a little more, and has just got bigger and bigger and bigger since then, and it shows no signs of stopping. It's driven mainly by the young market, people who grew up not knowing anything about film and have recently discovered this wonderful old technology. So that's what I think is driving the rise in prices. Having said that, I've recently noticed a quite significant decrease in auction prices on eBay for both cameras and lenses, so maybe the market's rebalancing, I don't know. Yendrik Tim says, my best deal was a Cosina 28mm f2.8 for €8 plus shipping. An Industar 61 I bought for less than €10. But that was years ago. I believe the price for this lens has risen in the meantime. Well, Yendrik, that was a pretty good price you paid for the Cosina lens. Well done, that really was quite cheap. Those lenses usually go for around £30 to £40, and the Cosina 28mm 2.8 is a very nice little lens, as are many of the Cosina lenses, so that was certainly a bargain. Industar prices, well, prices for the Industar 61, I don't know about this. I think they can be found. I have found them for very cheap prices pretty recently, within the past 6 months. One good tip, I mean, I've given this tip before, never buy from buy it nows if they're at an inflated price. Only buy if they're at what seems a fair price, a price that's comparable to auction prices. And another really good way to buy vintage lenses is to look for cameras that don't work. Cameras that are advertised as spares or repairs with a lens often go very, very cheaply, and they'll go for quite a bit less than the lens is worth very often. So there's a good tip. Buy broken cameras with lenses to get cheap vintage lenses. Zero R says, my best value lens was a Vivitar 58mm 2.8 macro that goes all the way to 1:1. It's a great performer, especially stock down, and I got it for £15. Well, that was an incredible bargain. That lens is really sought after. It's a really nice macro lens, and gosh, they usually go for, well, at least 10 times that, usually a little bit more. So that was a really good bargain and a really good find. And it does show that the cheap vintage lenses are out there. You can still score bargains. There are plenty of them out there. You've got to have patience and dedication to find them, but they are there. If you look often enough, you'll find them. Len says, I've watched many of your videos lately and I really love your voice. Well, thanks, Len. Also, I wanted to ask if you noticed quality differences between lens adapters, because the large price range from £20 to £200 just doesn't make sense for me. I mean, it's just a metal tube. Well then, yes, you're right. It is just a metal tube. All that you need for a successful adapter are a metal tube of the right dimensions with the right mounts at either end, and then you're good to go. There's no need to buy expensive adapters, absolutely no need at all. The cheapest ones will do. I only ever use the cheapest adapters for my lenses. I've got one on here on my Sony A7. Let me just show you closely. So there it is on the Sony A7. It's just a very simple adapter. I'll take the lens off and show you if I can figure out how to get it off. There we go. Take the adapter off, and you can see that literally all that is a metal tube. Whoops, have we lost focus? Yeah, all that is a metal tube. It's got matte black paint on the inside. That's to cut down any internal reflections. This is for Konica AR mount to the next Sony E mount, and it literally is just a tube of those dimensions. It's got the Konica mount here, the Konica AR mount here, and it's got the Sony E mount here on the back, and that's all I ever use. Of course, if you want a fancier adapter, there are occasions when you might need a fancier adapter. If, for example, you're shooting on a crop sensor camera and you're using vintage lenses and you want to squish as much of the lens image circle into that image as possible, you might use a speed booster. Now, speed booster is an adapter with an extra glass element within the adapter, designed to do just that, just to squish down that image so you can get the whole of the image on your sensor. Those will cost a lot more than a simple adapter, as will a chip with an adapter with a confirmation chip, a focus confirmation chip. Those are a little more expensive. They do allow you to, they do give you rather a little sound, a little chirrup when you're in perfect focus. So if you want one of those, you're going to have to pay a fair bit more as well. But if you want a simple adapter, no, all you need are the very cheapest ones, I'm glad to say. Right, what have we got next? Well, GEF says, "Hi Nigel, thanks for this video. From your experience, do you think I would get sharper or less sharp images with micro four thirds plus speed booster or full frame? Thank you for your help and please keep your great posts." Well, thank you for your question, GEF. If you're using a speed booster, that can degrade the image. Speed boosters have an extra glass element within them. Mine's only a cheap one, but nevertheless, it's very soft in the corners. Very sharp in the center, but very soft in the corners. And it does degrade the image in that regard a little bit. But all else being equal, there shouldn't be too much difference between micro four thirds and full frame. However, remember that a vintage lens on a micro four thirds sensor, well, the sensor looks through the more central portion of the lens, and that's the sharpest part of the lens. So you're going to get less soft corners than you would get with full frame. The center of the image may not be any different, but overall the image on a micro four thirds image from micro four thirds sensor shot with a vintage lens, it may be a little bit sharper because it actually looks through the central portion of that lens. You'll get sharper imaging across the whole of the field. Ole2720 says, "Thanks for the great content on your channel. I'm thinking about getting an Olympus EP1, but I'm not sure how easy my vintage Zuicos will match this camera in terms of focus and exposing. Do you know?" Well, Zuico lenses will shoot very nicely on the EP1. The EP1 is a lovely little camera, and in many ways it's the camera that began the mirrorless craze, the mirrorless trend. And I remember looking quite enviously at them when they were new. However, the EP1, for me, is lacking in one very important regard, and that is it doesn't have focus peaking. So I think it has a magnification function, but it doesn't have that peaking function that gives you an electronic confirmation of focus in the image, either in the viewfinder or on the back screen. And the EP1 doesn't have that. For me, that's kind of a deal breaker, because focus peaking is vital for mirrorless photography. It is the single best focusing aid you will find, and it makes shooting so much easier. So if I were you, Olay 2720, I'd just go a notch higher and get the next camera that you can with focus peaking, which I think is the EP2 or possibly the 3. Many of the early EP cameras are very cheap now, so I don't think you'll need to lay out too much cash in order to get that feature, and I do think that's an important feature. Okay, what's next? Well, Bigu or Baigu Zhang, I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing that correctly, says, one question: I've heard that Industar 55, the Industar 55 and the Industar 22 are basically the same lens under a different name. Is this true? No, it's not true. The Industar 50 is a development of the Industar 22. The 22 is a really nice lens, and I've got one in collapsible mount that I use on my Leicas and my Zorkis and Feds all the time. Lovely little lens, and I like shooting it digitally as well. The Industar 50, however, is the sharper lens, and it's a noticeably sharper lens. In fact, the Industar 50 in either solid or collapsible mount is one of the sharpest lenses I've ever shot. It's not that fast at f3.5, but my goodness is it sharp. You could cut yourself on this lens, either in solid or collapsible mount. Collapsible mount lenses tend to go for rather more money than the solid mounts. The solid mounts, you can find a good one for £10 to £15. They're very cheap. Very nice little lenses, but the 50 is sharper. Phil Hodgkinson says, if you want to shoot wide open, say at f2, which film speed is best? Well, Phil, it's a very tricky thing to shoot a film camera wide open in bright sunlight, or indeed in ordinary light. Most film cameras don't have a higher shutter speed than 1/1000th. They usually only go up to 1/1000th. There are some that go up to 1/2000th, but not so many. So you're fairly limited in your shutter speeds, and they're usually not that fast, certainly when compared with digital cameras. That means you can't keep that light out, and to get the right exposure, even using a slow film rated at 100 ISO, you are going to have to stop down. There is a solution, however, and that is to use an ND filter, a neutral density filter, and what they do is cut down the light coming into the camera. They just screw onto the lens, just onto the front of the lens there, like any ordinary filter you may have used before, but they cut down the amount of light coming into the camera, and they're graded according to strength: 1 stop, 2 stops, 3 stops, and so on. You do need to remember to adjust your exposure accordingly if you're using a manual camera, so that is something to remember. That's an extra step if you're using an ND filter with a manual camera. If you're using an automatic camera, auto exposure, then no worries, you really can't go wrong. Just stick the filter on and let your camera do the work. That's really how to shoot a film camera wide open in daylight, is to use a neutral density filter. So that's it for the questions. That's it for the mailbag session. Thank you very much to everybody who sent in questions. I'm sorry if I didn't manage to actually get your question put into the episode. I'll try and include them in further episodes. Please keep sending them in, because we're going to have these mailbags as a regular feature on the channel. So do keep sending in your questions, please. So coming up, what have we got coming up? Well, we've got a review of this mighty Leningrad rangefinder. I've not done this review yet. The Leningrad is waiting in the wings. I bought this at the photographic exhibition, the camera show, a few weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I can't wait to shoot it. There have been so many other things, bits and bobs getting in the way, but I am going to go out and shoot this very soon, so I'm really looking forward to doing that. We've got the Konica 55mm f1.4, a review on that lens. It's sitting on the Sony A7 here. I've not shot it very much, but initial results are very promising indeed, and that's a really beautiful lens. I'm not going to give you any spoilers. The episode's coming soon. We've also got an interview with Stephen Dowling of the Cosmo Photo website. That's a fascinating website for all things FSU related, plus other film gear as well. Go over and have a look. It's a really fascinating website for anybody who's into the FSU gear and likes old cameras. So in that episode, Stephen's going to talk about the website. He's going to talk about FSU gear, plus we're also going to talk about Stephen's new black and white film, and that's Agent Shadow. What an exciting name. And I've got some of that film here. There it is. Fantastic packaging on this film. It's rated at 400 ISO, but I believe it can be pushed to insane ISO ratings. So more on that to come. We'll be doing an episode just on this film very soon. We'll also be doing an episode on mobile phone photography. Mobile phones are here. They've all got a camera on them. Everybody's got one in their pocket, and they will make some very nice images if you use them within their limits. So I thought it might be interesting to look at mobile phones. They're the popular cameras of today. We've also got an episode coming up with a review of a very beautiful camera, the Polaroid SX70, and I can't wait for that. That's going to be fantastic. So we've got loads of stuff coming up. But that's it from me for this time. Thank you very much for tuning in and for watching, and please don't forget to like, subscribe and ring the bell thing before you go. Many thanks to all the subscribers who have subscribed, subscribers old, subscribers new, people who've been with us for a long time, people who've just joined. Welcome new people. Thank you everyone for coming on board. I must also thank the patrons over on Patreon, those people who make this channel possible. If it wasn't for those patrons, this channel just wouldn't be able to do what it does. So many thanks to the patrons for their continuing support. And if you like the content on this channel, you might consider becoming a patron yourself over at patreon.com/Zenography, and you can become a patron for as little as $1 per month. However, that is it from me for now. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you soon for some more Zenography.